This video focuses on EGI product criteria for proficiency scales. A proficiency scale is a tool that is used to clarify proficiency criteria to students and families. On this screen, we're seeing an example of one of the proficiency scales on the Division of Instruction curriculum map for Algebra 1, and we're looking at a sample proficiency scale for Learning Target 6, something related to quadratic equations. The EGI team has developed a rubric to support teachers in understanding what an effective proficiency scale should include. On the screen now, we're seeing that EGI product rubric, and you can see there are criteria listed for approaching proficiency, proficiency, and exemplary. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into those proficiency criteria. So the proficiency criteria for a proficiency scale are listed on your screen now. So a proficient proficiency scale, 1, references a single proficient learning target being assessed. 2, employs student-friendly language while maintaining grade level appropriate, content-specific academic vocabulary throughout. 3, communicates 0 to 4 or 1 to 4 levels of proficiency for the learning target, with level 3 indicating proficiency of the learning target. 4, is formatted in a single row. If there are multiple criteria for any given proficiency level, they are formatted in a list, for example, bullets or checkboxes. 5, includes achievement level descriptors for each proficiency level that are accessible. And 6, includes achievement level descriptors at increasing levels of complexity, outlining a pathway to proficiency and beyond for students. So let's take a look at the first criteria for proficiency, which is that the proficiency scale references a single proficient learning target being assessed. So in this example, again, we're looking at an Algebra 1 proficiency scale focused on Learning Target 6, and you can see at the top of this proficiency scale, we've got the learning target outlined. In this case, the learning target is I can solve quadratic equations using square roots, factoring, completing the square, and the quadratic formula. After the learning target, we also have the standards listed that are included in this particular learning target. So moving on to the second criteria for proficiency, employs student-friendly language while maintaining grade level appropriate, content-specific academic vocabulary throughout. So we're looking at the same example here, and here we're highlighting that throughout the proficiency scale, while there is student-friendly language used and it is accessible by students so that they can understand what is being communicated, at the same time, we've maintained that very important academic vocabulary. So on the screen now, you can see some of this academic vocabulary highlighted. We've got Algebra 1 vocabulary, including quadratic, square root, completing the square, complex, and function. Moving on to our third criteria for proficiency, that a proficiency scale communicates 0 to 4 or 1 to 4 levels of proficiency for the learning target, with level 3 indicating proficiency of the learning target. So here we're highlighting the top row of that proficiency scale where those different levels are outlined. You can see we have levels from 0 to 4, with level 0 being not yet or no evidence of proficiency and increasing from there. And our level 3 indicates proficiency. Our fourth criteria is formatted in a single row. If there are multiple criteria for any given proficiency level, they are formatted in a list, for example, bullets or checkboxes. So we can see, focusing on this part of the proficiency scale, that all of the criteria is contained in a single row on the rubric. There are not multiple rows where multiple skills or requirements are being outlined. In most of those different proficiency levels, there is a single criteria, but you can see at the approaching proficiency level, for example, there are multiple criteria, and those are entered here as a list. So for approaching proficiency level 2, students see the criteria, I can solve quadratic equations by using the quadratic formula, but they should also be able to meet the second criteria, which is I can solve quadratic equations by completing the square. Our fifth proficiency criteria includes achievement level descriptors for each proficiency level that are accessible. So looking more closely at the criteria outlined on this proficiency scale, these are descriptors that can be evaluated, measured, or identified. The descriptors are not ambiguous or unclear. So for example, if we look at the emerging proficiency level, level 1, students can see that they should be able to solve quadratic equations by taking the square root. So they should very clearly be able to solve those types of equations. At the level 4, students can apply the quadratic function to real life situations, interpret those results, and make predictions. And our sixth and final criteria for proficiency includes achievement level descriptors at increasing levels of complexity, outlining a pathway to proficiency and beyond for students. So here we can see in this particular proficiency level that these descriptors are increasing in complexity. First, students must demonstrate solving the quadratic equations by taking the square root or factoring. Then they must solve by using the quadratic formula or completing the square, and the complexity continues to increase in the remaining levels of proficiency on this proficiency scale.